book of Isaiah. Isaiah the prophet was a very long-lasting prophet in the southern kingdom of Judah. His ministry lasted through 5 different kings and spanned over 50 years. He lasted through the reign of Uzziah, Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah. If you zoom out and look at the scope of the book, it is absolutely huge. And I have to admit, it's very intimidating in approaching a book that's 66 chapters long. So I like to think of Isaiah this way. The primary theme of the book is God. God is central. So why would a prophetic book need to be written about God? That's the right question. The answer is because of the wickedness of Judah, their idolatry, their rejection of God's law, their injustice and self-serving, self-loving, self-seeking way of life. They had turned away from God. So this book is about God and takes place in several stages. I think of Isaiah almost as a miniature Bible in a way. It has Old Testament components and New Testament components and forward-looking components as well. The central section foretells the gospel. But for the sake of an overview, let's just break Isaiah down into 3 main sections. And perhaps this will help you to sort of track as you go through the book to know in which section you're at. The first section is chapters 1 through 35. And these chapters center around the theme of God's judgment and God as the holy and righteous judge. God is the righteous judge. He will hold Judah responsible for her wickedness. However, there's another interesting component to this. God not only declares judgment on Judah, but on other nations as well. Remember, this book is about God. And the prophecies of Isaiah were about humankind's judgment before a holy God. So there's this really incredible scene in Isaiah. He recounts how he was called to be a prophet for God in chapter 6. And the holiness of God, the glory of God was so great that Isaiah was terrified and he knew that he was doomed. So think about this. The book Isaiah is about God. And what greater display than the glory of God in the throne room where even the angels have to hide their faces. So contrast that picture with the wicked Judah and the wicked nations. God is the great Holy One, and God is the judge. So chapters 1 through 35 deal with judgment and destruction, and God being the one who is supreme over all and in control. But then we come to a transition. Chapters 36 through 39 serve as sort of a bridge into the rest of the book. And this bridge between the judgment and supremacy of God and the rest of the book holds a special question for God's people. Will you put your trust in the Lord? And then we reach the third section of Isaiah in chapters 40 through 66. And this is a very exciting section. And I think that as you read through Isaiah, if you're feeling weighed down with how much there is, you can look forward to these amazing chapters, 40 through 66. They're very forward-looking, and this section holds 3 parts. So this last section we're dividing into 3 parts. The first part is God's comfort for the future exile in chapters 40 through 48. So God lets them know, you're going to experience my judgment and you will be punished, but I will be with you. And God is comforting them in these chapters. He'll be with them. They'll endure terrible devastation, but God's comfort is there. The second part of this final section is in chapters 49 through 53. And these chapters foretell of the one God will send to provide hope. And here we find references to Jesus. The famous suffering servant chapter in Isaiah 53 foretells the price God would pay for the sin of humankind. All right, so zoom out for a second. Remember, there was judgment and destruction coming for Judah and the nations earlier in the book. Now look at the amazing contrast to see the one who will be wounded for our transgressions and bruised for our iniquities. The final portion of this third section is found in chapters 54 through 66. And these chapters speak of the future. God will reign forever. There is a new creation and a new Jerusalem. These chapters are filled with incredible hope. And some of the prophecies in Isaiah have yet to come to pass. And those parts you'll find in the final chapters. So zooming out, we can see that the book of Isaiah is structured in such a way that it's like sharing the gospel. And what really amazes me is that in the New Testament, Isaiah is quoted more than any other Old Testament book. Surely we can understand that a book with God as the central theme should be quoted the most, right? There's so many other instances where there are highlights within the book, and of course, there's two different times of foretelling of Jesus' birth in the early chapters, but these fall in line with the context of a God who's in control. God is always faithful to offer hope, even in Judah's darkest moments. So remember, when you get to those sections, they serve to highlight something specific about God's sovereignty as the holy and righteous judge. Other highlights include vineyard imagery and short narrative accounts. There's a unique account of Hezekiah in Isaiah as well. But I want to encourage you with this. Don't feel lost in Isaiah. Don't get bogged down with every little detail. Instead, take those details in, think on them, meditate on them, but keep your God-focused glasses on and don't lose sight of the main theme. This is all about God. This is all about God. It's a wonderful book relaying to God's people exactly who He is through His holiness, His judgment, His comfort, and hope. And I hope that you relish the moments that you spend time reading this amazing prophetic book. And I also hope that you will think of the big picture as you read so that you don't feel lost. It's almost like we could say that's the gospel of Isaiah, because we have all of the elements of the gospel are present. Early on, we have that man is sin and deserves God's judgment, and God is holy and must judge. Then we have a call to faith in the bridge section of the book. And then we have Jesus, who would be wounded for our transgressions and bruised for our iniquities. So Jesus paying the price as God in the flesh, foretold in Isaiah. So really amazing that we have some almost a miniature, or not a miniature, but an Old Testament gospel book. So I hope that you really enjoy this book. Keep focused on what it says about God, and I'm confident that you will gain more than you ever have reading through this amazing prophetic book.